Good morning, everyone. On this Monday in the 34th week in Ordinary Time, this is the last week of the liturgical year before we start a new one with Advent. So we are ending this week with readings from the book of Daniel, and we're beginning in chapter 1, verses 1 through 6, and then 8 through 20. In the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon came and laid siege to Jerusalem. The Lord handed over to him Jehoiakim, king of Judah, and some of the vessels of the temple of God. He carried them off to the land of Shinar and placed the vessels in the temple treasury of his God. The king told Ashpenaz, his chief chamberlain, to bring in some of the children of Israel of royal blood and of the nobility, young men without any defect, handsome, intelligent, and wise, quick to learn, and prudent in judgment, such as could take their place in the king's palace. They were to be taught the language and literature of the Chaldeans. After 3 years of training, they were to enter the king's service. The king allotted them a daily portion of food and wine from the royal table. Among these were men of Judah: Daniel, Hannah, Mishael, Azariah. But Daniel was resolved not to defile himself with the king's food or wine, so he begged the chief chamberlain to spare him this defilement. Though God had given Daniel the favor and sympathy of the chief chamberlain, he nevertheless said to Daniel, "I am afraid of my lord the king. It is he who allotted your food and drink. If he sees that you look wretched by comparison with the other young men of your age, you will endanger my life with the king." Then Daniel said to the steward, whom the chief chamberlain had put in charge of Daniel, Hannah, Mishael, and Azariah, "Please test your servants for 10 days. Give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then see how we look in comparison with the other young men who eat from the royal table. And treat your servants according to what you see." He acceded to this request and tested them for 10 days. After 10 days, they looked healthier and were better fed than any of the young men who ate from the royal table. So the steward continued to take away the food and wine they were to receive and gave them vegetables. To these 4 young men, God gave knowledge and proficiency in all literature and science, and to Daniel the understanding of all visions and dreams. At the end of the time the king had specified for their preparation, the chief chamberlain brought them before Nebuchadnezzar. When the king had spoken with all of them, none was found equal to Daniel, Hannah, Mishael, and Azariah. And so they entered the king's service. In any question of wisdom or prudence which the king put to them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in his kingdom. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Well, we have in this rather lengthy one, and we can basically read the whole chapter to really get the whole point of the book of Daniel. It's an introduction to the main character, which is obviously Daniel, but there's also the 3 other men also part of it. And it situates the book right from the get-go, the time when this happens, and it's then the 3rd year of the reign, Jehoiakim, king of Judah. And what happens here? End of a chapter for Jerusalem. And here we now have a new chapter in Babylon. So it's an interesting bookend from the 2 that are there. The crisis is on being kosher and following the law of God in terms of food. Now, it's important to think about this. Eating food is spiritual. I mean, think about the Eucharist. I mean, this is the highest of all. So having food is a spiritual act. It's important. and especially for Jews who were instructed to be separate, to not be like the rest, as a sign of what God's covenant is to them. And so it was a crisis moment for Daniel and his three other buddies. And what was proposed was, give us just vegetables and water and let's see what happens. And lo and behold, God was with them. They were healthier than the others, not eating the riches of other foods. So here we begin with a crisis, and following after God, following his commands, gives merit, gives them a place in the king's court, which will be important later as the chapters go on in the book of Daniel. Stay safe, folks. Hopefully we see each other soon. Bye for now.